Oh, yeah.
It's so perfect. Is your face in it?
It is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Fantastic.
Oh my god. Okay. Hey. I am normally a poet. That's usually what I do. I'm actually submitting to Right Bloody Publishing on March 1st. Woo! I have a month to finish editing my shit and turning it in. So wish me luck. Go to my YouTube page because I could use some subscription support. It's youtube.com/don'tforgetpoetry and amandacareypoetry.wordpress.com. But this isn't a poem, it's a short story, so I'm way out of my element, so I'm like really nervous right now because I don't normally write prose. So here's a little prose action for you. I started writing it in November and I just finished it today. It's called The First.
Oh, appropriate.
It all started when I was about 7. Around the time that my parents were getting a divorce and things became quieter in the house, I began to hear the noises. Ordinary children who are suffering from stress at home see their fears manifested into nightmares of monsters under their bed or in their closet. I was no ordinary child. These noises didn't just come from under my bed. They would show up as a tall shadow walking next to me on the sidewalk, a presence rustling my canopy and making its way onto my bed, nuzzling itself next to my legs like an affectionate house cat. A calming voice as my vision came after realizing the usual bullies have found me, and the softness that always pulled me out of my nightmares when I felt like there could be no return. As I got older, like most children with Santa Claus, the magic surrounding everything began to fade. Dandelions turned from flowers to weeds, doll clothes boxed away to make room for high heels, coloring books traded in for philosophy books, and what was necessary replaced the necessary playthings. Even as this very regular part of growing up happened, I never lost my pipe dream for an adventure, and someone like my shadowy mystery friend to share it with. I would wonder at times before I went to sleep if I'd ever get to see the real thing when I got older. Believing that when we lose our innocence, the world can bring us an even bigger dream than when we could conjure ourselves. So, making my way through high school and college, I went hunting for it. I searched every musician in every band that played tunes that made me feel sexy. I searched every actor in every film I acted in that made me cry on cue. I searched every lost soul in every coffee shop I locked eyes with. I took a blade to my sternum and busted open my chest, plucked out my heart and stitched it to my sleeve. The musicians used it as their guitar picks, the actors as their clown nose, and the lost souls, well, people can be scary, inconsistent, selfish, and therefore difficult to trust. After a series of times of opening myself up to many of this breed and getting hurt in the process, I chose to take my heart and put it back in my chest and stitch up my skin for good. This was all well and safe until I met Erste. But Erste was no ordinary person. In fact, he wasn't a person at all. He was a monster. A monster living in the different dark hiding places of where I slept. It was on a Tuesday morning, May 15th, that I met Erste. It was so early it was still dark out. I awoke erect and in a sweat, my breath panting and heart pumping from a nightmare. I don't remember much about this nightmare, except that there were dark shadows of tall figures following me, chasing me with knives, already dripping with blood. As I wiped the sweat from my bangs and started to gain control of my breathing, I noticed my IKEA brown-black nightstand wobble, causing an unlit candle to tip over. I wondered what pushed my nightstand as I cautiously reached my hand over to tilt the candle back upwards. The comforter around the other side of my bed rustled. Something was hiding under my wire-framed bed. Afraid my head would be decapitated if I had peeked underneath, I handed down one of my burgundy throw pillows as an experiment. Just as its bottom corner brushed the ground, I saw a furry paw with dull claws gently reach out and take hold of the pillow. I remember resting my ear to the mattress and hearing a faint wheezing, and then realizing that something was sleeping beneath me and just needed something soft to hold on to. This went on for about a week, every night. Not always in the same place, however. Sometimes it would peekaboo around the corner of my closet and I would throw my pink Afghan. Sometimes I would see yellow eyes poke out from behind the couch and I would throw my burgundy throw pillow. It felt nice to know I wasn't sleeping entirely alone, especially as my nightmares began to grow and become more intense. The black figures began to have deformed faces. Sometimes they looked like my father, and sometimes they were a man I had never met. Sometimes they tore at my clothes, sometimes they laughed and spat blood in my face. One night, I didn't think I would wake up at all. I felt as though a demon was sitting on my chest and I couldn't breathe. I was paralyzed, trying to scream but nothing came out, stuck in a narrow tunnel where I saw a rush of black smoke flooding and water falling towards me. I found the ability to move and woke up thrashing against a large, furry body, trying to settle me down, asking me what had happened because I was screaming. Tears streaming down my face, I looked up to find what was holding me was my shadow friend. He towered over me by about 8 inches and nuzzled his furry chin against my head, telling me not to be afraid, that he was there. So this is where our story began. I shivered and took in the warmth of his full-bodied, long-haired fur coat as we held each other, forfeiting the pillows and blankets for each other. He switched on the lamp near my privacy partition, and our eyes sparkled as we took in each other's beauty. On bottom, he was deep teal with lion-like legs and a tail. On top, he was covered with long, sleek black fur and orange spots about 1.5 inches in diameter on his back that he said were monster warts. There were gentle blue feathers at his shoulders and upper back, and a mouth that looked like it was designed to smile. Crooked, white teeth, a somewhat thick neck, a small nose, and large golden eyes, and 2 spoon-shaped flaps for ears. I learned then that his name was Erste, which he said means the first in German, his native tongue. I told him that my name was Ava, which means life and serpent. We took each other in and saw ourselves in each other. From there, I felt propelled into a magical world I had never seen before. Sometimes one hand looked like 6, colors became more vibrant, animals followed us wherever we went, stones became enormous, coyotes became friends, mischief became funny, and I always felt as though my stomach was stirring up a tornado reached my heart. My nightmares went away. My chest inflated. I could feel the seam that I had so carefully sewn up becoming looser and eventually burst. I had been split open. The 2 of us walked around the underworld of Los Angeles and the forests beyond with our chests burst open, shameless as our beating hearts bumped and pumped hard for each other. We were inseparable, floating in another dimension where we had no roots to the earth anymore, just roly-polying around this playful land where the sun was always setting, casting off a perfectly pink sky. Sometimes we would ask for night to come to watch the twinkling stars, and it would. We would swim around through the Milky Way, whip round the North Star, and drink from the Big Dipper. When music reached our ears, we could feel it rippling through our veins as if we were playing every note and dancing to every beat. When we ate food, it was as if the life force of every kernel of every seed, nut, leaf, loaf, bun, link, loaf, grub was pouring its energy directly into our interstellar, dehydrated, spacesuited souls. We would look at star maps and revel in how our dots were aligned. We'd look at our planet below us and plant red fate pins in all of our goals and run twine from pushpin to pushpin until we could see the rest of our days entangled forever. Some days we would take to grab ink and quill and sit on our favorite crater, leaning our backs against each other to journal out in poetry the endless adventure. Some days we'd be so tired all we could do is lie bare, curled up, intertwined like twins from a new litter of kittens, just discovering light and sound and muscle for the first time. Sometimes we would lose sight of each other in this weightless world and panic, afraid of getting sucked into a black hole and never seeing each other again. At that moment, I'd see his paw or he'd see my hand, and we'd grasp tight. His eyes would turn pink and his teeth would clench. I would grasp so tightly that his heart would fall right out of his chest. When that happened, the tornado would reach my head and come rushing out my mouth in a scream as I saw the black hole in his chest where his heart used to be. But each time, he would eventually find his heart again lying in the dust, brush it off, and tuck it back in his chest. I became so consumed in him not losing his heart that I monitored his chest day and night. So afraid of him losing it on his own, I became its guardian. I held tight, and each time I did, he would lose it. My heart would stay in my chest, stubborn as it was, and just jiggle around a bit like jello. One day I came home to find he wasn't under my bed. I called out, "Erste, Erste." I screamed his name, but no answer. The next night he told me he'd been to another closet, one that he had visited before mine, just to say hello. Afraid of my past settling into my present, I put a collar around his neck and hooked a leash on him. This would work for a short while, but every so often, with a pacing from wall to wall of my small studio, he would break the chain, and again I would cry out, "Erste, Erste." I started to do some research, how to care for your monster, and what to do when your monster snarls at you. I grabbed the book off the shelf for emergency guidance and sat on my toilet seat and began to cry as if for the first time I tasted tears. When my hands hit my forehead, I felt a similar scraping and softness. My hands and arms had begun to grow long black fur, and my nails had become claws. Over the next few weeks, I noticed more and more of it, one ear to a spoon, then another, my straight teeth cocking at strange angles, my long brown hair shedding in its place, more fur and orange spots forming on my back. At the same time, I noticed Erste was losing his hair. His warts were going away and his teeth becoming straighter. One day, I looked into his eyes and said, "Your eyes, they're blue. What happened to your beautiful golden eyes?" To which he replied, "Well, what happened to yours? They're no longer sparkling blue as the starry sky." We were starting to sink back into Earth at this time, too. Falling through the atmosphere and landing on the soft grass in front of our building, we both fell. We brushed the dirt off our knees and thought to ourselves, "That's okay, we just have to find our balance." But what about our eyes? And look, you're shedding your fur on me. That's why I'm all furry now. Not realizing the fur was rooted inside of my own skin. Offended by this, he screamed, "Well, look at me. You've made me lose my hair. I'm no longer who I was." One morning in the shower, I saw where it was coming from and took a razor blade and began to furiously shave. I was no longer myself either. That night, he slept under my bed. The next night, he slept in my closet. The next night, he wasn't there. I stopped screaming for him and instead cried for myself. When he finally found his arms around my body again, it was not the same. I wanted his furry warmth again. I wanted my straight teeth back. His blue eyes were blank, stoic, lifeless, while mine were alive with fear. I longed for our starry swims, our adventurous night outings, and our hearts beating in tandem. Shortly after, my nightmares had come back. Only this time I was awake. I squeezed the air out of Erste, and his new skin went gray. He bared his human teeth at me and spat Sumerian at me, a language I'd never heard him speak before, a language embedded in his savage monster roots. He laughed maniacally at my fear of him. He pushed his new index finger into all parts of my heart, first the right, then the left ventricle, both atriums, working their way up to my aorta, and I said, "Stop it, you're hurting me, stop it." When he eventually did, my mind told me to walk away, but my heart reached for the monster inside of this demon human that once protected me from the very evil he spat at me. I needed my monster back. I wanted Erste back. I told him the next morning what I wanted. He said nothing. I tried to speak German to him, but somehow he lost his ability to speak altogether. I cried and said, "I love you. I love you, warts and all. I love you though you chewed with your mouth open. I love you though your strides were long and hard to keep up with. I love you though you never knew where you were going and often ran into walls. I love you though you're not yourself right now. So I will wait. I will for both of us. I will put braces on my teeth and get a wax. I will watch your hair grow back and offer you a comb when you need it. I will burn your collar and leash. You will always have my pillow, my blanket, and all my shadow spaces. When you are ready, you will have me again. Me as me, you as you. When we see each other again, we will stay on the ground. I will hold your hand and then let you go and watch you spread your feathers and fly."